Welcome to The First Dollar, where we interview fascinating founders about the first sales their startup ever made. Welcome to another episode of The First Dollar. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Arjun Pillai, the co-founder and CEO at Docket.ai. He's building something amazing there. But let me just brag about this guy for a minute for anyone listening, because you'll hear why I think his advice is gold. In 2012, Arjun co-founded a company he later sold to FullContact, one of the top data companies at the time. In 2018, he co-founded another company, which he sold to ZoomInfo, the 800-pound gorilla in the room in data. Arjun, do you ever get bored of absolutely crushing it, man?
Hey there, it's great to chat with you again, and thanks for having me. Once you're an entrepreneur, you are always an entrepreneur. It's about the problem that you solve. It's the team that you build. It's the customers that you help. That doesn't go. I still have a ton of energy. I have it in me to build for sure Docket, and who knows what is next.
That's right. You're a young man. You've got plenty of time ahead of you. Tell us about Docket, because we're hoping to see a hat trick, maybe the third time around. So what's the problem you're solving with Docket AI?
I've been in the sales tech and martech space for the past 12 years. When the salespeople are selling a complex product or a solution, they need a ton of help because the salespeople are not engineers. And this help is given as a sales enablement tool or as sales engineers to the account executives. Sales enablement tools are not really cutting it. Sales engineers are very expensive. So this is the problem statement. And the way Docket thinks about it is, the thesis behind is that almost all the questions that your buyers are asking, they have been asked and answered before. It is somewhere in the enterprise or it is locked in somebody's head. Docket is an AI sales engineer that ingests the structured and unstructured data inside your company already, learns from the best sellers, and scales the best practices to all of the account executives that you have so that they can win more, onboard faster, and get more revenue going for you.
This is amazing. It's interesting to see how you're talking about a facet of sales technology that maybe isn't as commonly talked about. Sales engineering, sales enablement. Obviously, there's a lot of sales enablement tooling, but classically, we think of sales engineering like that is a human being. There's always a person involved, but there's things that don't require the human being. Where do you see that cutoff today? And where do you think that's going to be in the future?
Yeah, the way we think about it, you're absolutely right. Sales engineers are humans. These are sophisticated, super smart people. But then what they get pulled in on a day-to-day basis is to answer the same exact question that they have answered 15 times before. A 16th account executive joins, they will ask the same question. And these folks are filling out the same RFP, the same RFI, the same security questionnaire that they have done 50 times before. So they are getting pulled into these mundane tasks, because of which they are not able to focus on the complex tasks, which is the custom demos and solutioning that they want to really focus on the enterprise deals. The way we think about Docket is account executives, AI sales engineer, and it'll be able to help account executive to be a lot more self-sustainable. This is something everybody likes because the efficiency of the go-to-market is just going up when AEs can operate their own. So Docket takes care of all the mundane tasks, right? Filling out an RFP or a security questionnaire, answering all the instant question, creation of these different documents that you want to create. We'll take care of all of those tasks. 70% of our users are account executives. 20% of our, maybe a little bit more than 20 are sales engineers. And the rest is a combination of sales enablement, product marketing, some support.
I like that distinction between, look, this is maybe more repeated, consistent effort. It's just the stuff that has to get done and it gets done repeatedly. There's no reason that the human needs to do that over and over again. That's really where we're finding the cases best suited to AI in most scenarios.
Absolutely. I am not going to go to ServiceNow and then replace the sales engineers because they are doing super custom work. Here also, the kind of companies that we work with, sales engineers is a scarce resource, right? We have 1:7, 1:5, whatever is that ratio. They should be let to go do their enterprise deals. Don't pull them for every single thing. Don't keep asking questions. They get tapped on their shoulder like 10 times a day.
Yeah. The show's called The First Dollar. So we want to talk about, in your many times as an entrepreneur, starting businesses, convincing people to hand you money when all you had was a dream. Let's go back in time, because you mentioned before we hit record that Docket's taken advantage of the fact that you and many of your team have a great network. As an entrepreneur, you're going to find that you build up that network. If you don't burn any bridges, you're going to have more and more people willing to support you in those early stages because they've seen you succeed. They know that they're placing the chips on a bet that they can handle. Now, but let's go back to early in your career. When you started out, you were building your first company. And you had to convince somebody that this was a real thing, that there was a company here and not just a guy. How did that look? Where did you start?
The way you have to do it is to make sure that you go so bullish. You hopefully know your domain a little bit. You are presenting in front of the people and trying to put yourself out there. So that trust is on you. That hopefully extrapolates to your product, right? That's so the key is to make sure that the founder is able to garner trust on the call. Even before that, there's a way in which you have to get in front of the customer, which again, depending on your network, depending upon your experience, might be different. I started when I was 23. I literally know nobody. And I was in Kerala, with South rural in India, where I don't have any buyers to talk to, honestly. So my buyers were in the US. Every day I would wake up with LinkedIn free. I would send 150 LinkedIn requests. I would spice up my LinkedIn, right? Like a good photograph, a good headline, then 150 requests, 60 to 75 will accept, send 60 to 75 messages. About 15 of them will respond. And then out of the 15, one or two will agree on a call. Every day morning, I start and do the 150, book one or two meetings. I did this for the first 45 days and I landed 60 meetings. This is how I got in front of the people. And then that Skype was not Zoom back then. So you get on Skype calls and start generating trust. You do a ton of research on who they are, right? They are like, who is this person? Where did they work? Which university did they go to? What are their main problems? What did they post about? What was their Twitter? You look at 35 minutes of your research time and then get on the call. Especially when you're early in your career, this is the only way you can establish that rapport and trust because you cannot name drop. You don't have big brands supporting you. So
Yeah.
you do this and then they'll warm up to you. And finally, just be very honest, right? A lot of the initial sales that I did for my first company were folks who wanted to support a startup. I basically told them that this is what I have. I think you have this problem. It would be really good to take your feedback. I didn't say that I would need all of your money. I just said I need your feedback. So there is this famous saying, right? When you ask for feedback, you get money. When you ask for money, you get feedback. So I think a little bit of that worked out initially. That's how my first company, with a failed product of mine, a bunch of them tried out the product. Nobody used the product, but I still was able to get people to at least use the product. With the successful product, yeah, like a bunch, 190 companies or something use the product. So that was my first company.
Yeah.
This one, Docket, to your point, it was different because like I have network a little bit more at least. One actionable suggestion for people who probably are not as network, but have some network. The best way that people don't really forget, like, Rex, I know you, right? Imagine we were in the same company.
Hmm.
I moved on and started a company. Now inside your head, you are like Arjun left and started a company. This is tough. And then I reach out to you and say, hey, Rex, I found that you're connected to this person. Can you help me connect to that person? You will immediately be like, yes, Arjun, I know what you're doing is hard. Let me help you.
Yeah.
Mapping your existing company network when they move to different companies or through their LinkedIn is probably the easiest place where you can get your first deals. A lot of my first 20 meetings came through my ZoomInfo network. These are smart people who moved into different companies. I immediately went and said, hey, buddy, I started this thing. Tough to get meetings. I don't have a ton of money right now. Don't have marketing budget. They're like, don't worry about it. I'll hook you up. In no time, I got to 20 meetings. That's the difference between what I did first and this time.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the advantages of being an entrepreneur who has an experience at a larger company, whether that's because you sold your company to or were a member of a team within a larger department. I started my career at a software company with a few hundred employees. It was almost 1,000 when I left. And a lot of those relationships persisted. And I know that's true for a lot of people who are at bigger companies and they think, okay, I've maybe built a solution for this company. I'm going to build that into its own business. And they create a startup. All those relationships, and we've heard this from other entrepreneurs as well, other founders, all those relationships are valuable and you maintain those connections. There's a higher likelihood because they know you, they have some relationship of trust with you. One thing I was really grateful for when I was at that software company early in my career is they told us to connect with everyone. Be connected to your entire company. Everyone who joins the company, connect with them on LinkedIn. And now I see them moving into these other places. I'm able to watch that. We're able to stay connected much better than if I hadn't done anything and then just reached out cold to someone who I should have known, but wasn't still connected to. So I'd say expanding that network, continuing to stay connected to those people seems like it's been hugely valuable for you.
Absolutely. And it's, if you are not part of this big company, maybe there is a university that you can use as a common element of connection.
Yep.
There should be some commonality, right? Just saying that, oh, you are in DC, I am also in DC, that itself is probably a good step, right?
Yep.
There should be some commonality for us to start talking. And that's all you need. I have found that a significant amount of people are helpful to startups. I'm not saying they're going to put $100,000 deal in front of you just because they want to be helpful, but an intro, a meeting, a feedback call. These are things that they can put like 20 minutes of their time and help you out. I have found people being super willing to
I love that. It makes you feel good about humanity that most of us want to help each other out. We think, hey,
100%.
this is the tough thing. Like you said, it's tough to go and start a business in the world. And especially if you can articulate what the problem is that you're solving, most people agree there should be more problem solvers out there. So we want to support each other.
Exactly. That has been my experience.
Now, this has been your experience in your professional career. Let's talk about growing up, living in India. What did you do that set you up on this course? Were you a kid who was going out and doing chores for neighbors and earning money? Did you sell things to your friends at school? What did you do? Was there anything that signaled, oh, Arjun's going to be an entrepreneur? He's going to be a founder one day.
I grew up in a middle class family in India. If you are growing up in India, doing chores and making money while you are in school or in college is not like a very usual thing. It, even today, it's not a normal usual thing because your parents give things to you. We didn't have a ton of things. We had enough to get by. But I think there was no real way to say that, okay, Arjun would become an entrepreneur. Nobody thought it. Even the word startup is an unheard of word when I started off in my first company. In fact, my company became the first product company in the history of my state to exit. It has never happened before. The nascency of
Oh,
the ecosystem, right? So it
yeah.
does not. Nobody imagines anybody to become an entrepreneur in that place right out of the gate. But I think one thing that really set me inside me was my father. My father was actually an entrepreneur. I didn't realize it until 1.5 years into my entrepreneur journey. He had a small rubber band factory right next to my house. It was a small place, very manual. 12 people used to do 70% of the work manually to create small rubber bands, which he would export it to Mumbai. That's what he did from 1990 to 2015. I was born in 1988. In my memory as a kid, I would look out the window in my room. I would see my father waking up at 6, going to the job, coming back at 8, having breakfast, going back to job, 11 a.m., come back for tea, go back, 1:30, come back, food, go back, 6 o'clock, come back, food, go back. So I
Wow.
would see him do this thing, right? Just 6 hours of sleep and continuously hustling. I had never connected the dots, but I'm sure something broke inside me. I became the guy who wanted to do something, the guy determined to work hard. I have seen all of these things, and without knowing it, went pretty deep into me. I think that's the defining factor. And I'm sure that a lot of my characteristics has been evolved through that experience of living in India, seeing my family, seeing my father, seeing my mother.
That's incredible. And I'm sure that is a part of you, whether you recognized it consciously early on or not. Certainly you can see it now. Did you ever get to witness him having business transactions? Did you get to watch him selling, earning business overseas or anything? Or was that all done behind the scenes?
No, I have never seen him do business. Since this was a very manual heavy business, my father intentionally left me and my brother out of the business so that we never go into it because it is very manual heavy,
Yeah.
75% super manual work. So he wanted to give us good education. That's
Mhm.
why he wanted to do it. His plan was always to sunset that at the end of when we get to some place, which is what he did. I have helped him out when his workers couldn't come. He would call very rarely, but he would call, hey, can you help me lift this or mix these two things together? Some small things.
Yeah.
That's it.
But he gave you that gift of being able to see that from afar, but not pulling you in and forcing you to take on the family business and not getting you involved in this manual labor growing up. What a gift.
Yeah. And in India, especially back in the day, 2010, 2012 time, when you said you want to start a company, that's not really a welcome thing, right? I was an engineer. I got a good job with Infosys, which is considered a decent job. So when you say I'm going to resign and start something, you usually get a lot of pushback in India. Now things have changed a little bit, but even
Sure.
today. But because of my father's background, his advice was, if you are willing to work really hard, yeah, you can resign and start. That probably wouldn't have been so easy if he wasn't an entrepreneur.
Definitely. thinking about yourself early in your career as you were starting your first business, you now have awesome experience, things that you can count on for the next business and the next business, and many entrepreneurs and founders who you work with and help. But let's just talk to Arjun a few years ago. What advice would you give yourself back then? A hard fought lesson that you would take to yourself and apply, particularly in the area of earning new business?
And there are bunch, obviously, right? Like the basic things like they don't buy your tool, they are buying their solution, right? Like
Hmm.
it's basic thing like that. It sounds obvious, but then entrepreneurs have very difficult time, especially if you're an engineer entrepreneur. In most likelihood, your first pitch is a technology pitch or a product pitch. It is not a use case pitch. It is not a problem pitch. And I did that myself. I spent a ton of time pitching my product. And it took a lot of good people telling me that doesn't work. That's not what you should sell. You should
Yeah.
sell what they need to solve. The experience beyond when you give the product and then the promised land is what you're selling, right? You're not the product or the technology. So that's probably one that I really care a lot now at Docket and all the companies that I advise. Validation. I built 4 products that failed in my first company. Why did it fail? Common pattern. I did not validate properly. I did not go and speak with enough customers. I did not have enough people raising their hand and say, this is a very pressing problem and I will pay for it if you solve this. I had 0 people telling me that. And I went and built 4 products. All of them failed. But the 5th product I validated really thoroughly. That's why it ended up succeeding. So going back, I would have probably saved at least 2 years doing that validation. So that's probably the second big one. The third big one is just this is really a marathon. It's not a sprint. You don't have to kill yourself doing it. You can slow down a little bit, speed up a little bit, and it's all part of the game. You should know how to spend time with your family. You should know how not to burn out. You should find way to eat healthy. You should know how to exercise. You should know how to follow your passion. This is all part of it because entrepreneurship is not a job. It's a way of life. And a way of life has all these things. It's not just work.
Love it. Those are great and remind me so many experience I've heard from other founders like yourself who have been in the trenches. I particularly love the marathon reminder because there is a glory to the hustle and grind culture. And your dad even mentioned you got to be willing to work really hard, but that's in seasons. Just from witnessing awesome founders, the ones who lasted, the ones who have done it multiple times, there's seasons where they work incredibly hard, harder than anybody I've ever met. And then there's seasons where they take their vacations and they set up more of their lifestyle to incorporate it into the business rather than competing one with the other.
Right. When it matters, when you see that there is something blocking your company, you're going to roll up your sleeves and get the shit done.
Yeah.
Right. That's when you go like 7 days, no sleep, just get it done. But then after that, if you think that things are starting to stabilize, you go back, look at the team, talk to them, check in with them, go with your family, check in with yourself. So yeah, seasons is probably the right word to use. Yeah, but I think that's very, very critical if you want to build a really big company.
What's the best book you'd recommend to a fellow founder?
Hard Things About Hard Things is probably the book that I think everybody refers. And then the Ride of a Lifetime was another book that I really enjoyed by Bob. Those two come to mind. There are so many, but I'm not so much of a book person.
Yep.
I consume a lot more content on podcasts and YouTube videos. I listen to a bunch of podcasts all the time. I always have a watch later list that is like 7, 8 videos long and I get through them. By that time, there'll be more. So that's my primary consumption medium. But yeah, those 2 books, 0 to 1 is also amazing. So there's Traction. If you want to go super tactical on go to market, now things have changed a little bit. But if you
Sure.
put that filter on, Traction is a great book.
Well, these are great. I'm sure that people are going to want to connect with you, learn more from your experiences. Where do you prefer that they find you?
LinkedIn is the best place to connect personally with me. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I try to post as much as possible on LinkedIn. Some of the things that we are talking here, I try to put out there for knowing more about Docket AI. Just search for Docket AI or come to docketai.com. There are demos on LinkedIn. Feel free to check those things out. I would love to connect with everybody and help in whatever way, shape, or form.
Amazing. Thanks for being on the show, Arjun.
Thanks for having me.
And there you have it, another first dollar in the books. Thanks for tuning in, and a huge thank you to our guests for sharing their story. If you enjoyed this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a fellow founder, leave us a review, or hit us up on LinkedIn. Want more startup insights and strategies? Head over to foundersales.com, where we're helping technical founders turn their innovations into thriving businesses. Until next time, keep hustling for that next dollar.